2021 was a horrible year for a lot of people. Grave challenges for sure. I was questioning ignorance. Not in a conceptual, like, I don't know that's a color blue, or I don't know that you said no or yes. I mean, to step out of my thinking mind. When I step out of my thinking mind, stillness and awareness, you feel it, it's present, it's there. And your mind is thoughtless. There's a presence, an awareness that you're aware, and presence is aware of itself. It's quite odd. It's peaceful. There's a governing canal and a central canal that I know are in my body that are what allows input, sensory input into according to my environment, right? And I take in that input, that sensory input, and it creates a thought. And I was thinking that if thought gives rise, consciousness gives rise to thought, this thinking without thought almost makes you feel like you have no knowledge, right? But I think that's the ego. I think that's the ego trying to use that and say, see, you know nothing. You're diminishing yourself. You're going to feel threatened, and it's not going to work. The egoic mind it really will come in any way, shape, or form that it feels it can win, because it doesn't like to be diminished. It feels diminished. We all have an ego. Our ego and vanity sometimes are what drive us in a positive way in an action in our life, right? It's not until that ego creates pain or suffering to another individual that it becomes detrimental mentally or psychologically, right? So when I talked about ignorance, I'm not talking about being, not knowing something. I'm talking about stepping out of your thinking mind. I think in Greek philosophy, didn't Socrates speak about that? Or did Socrates say something like, there was a Delphi of Oracle or something like that was asked him a question about why he's the wisest man, and it's because he said, I know nothing. I don't think people really understood what he meant when he said, I don't know nothing. It didn't mean he was an ignorant individual. It meant that he had stepped out of his thinking mind and became still in awareness. And when you're still in awareness, thoughtlessness is present. You don't have a thought in your head. I've said that so many times. In consciousness, I have no thoughts in my mind. My mind is thoughtless. Therefore, at this moment, in this that I'm speaking, I'm I have ignorance to the thinking mind. Isn't that right? I mean, that's me without thought, and without thought, I have no knowledge, right? Because it's not until we assign thought meaning that it becomes knowledge to us and we act it out. That's the ego. This is thought without knowledge. I have no knowledge. I'm sitting in the present moment in stillness, in oneness, in consciousness with God. I feel pulled to the right side. When I meditate, I feel pulled to the right side. When I close my eyes and do conscious meditation, or just sit and do conscious meditation with my eyes open, I'm pulled to the right side. I feel being pulled, like my head's turned to the right side. I'm sitting at the right hand of God. It says that in the Bible, that we sit at the right hand of God. That's why I feel that profound pull to the right. I'm seeking his face, yet God's not form. God is consciousness. God is not form. And so I can't show you him, I can't show you heaven, and I can't show you the past or the future. And sitting in the now, it's without thought, without knowledge. I think that's what they meant when I was taking anthropology and Greek philosophy, and I was listening to some talks on Socrates when they asked him about that question, and it was like, what does he mean? No thought, right? Ignorance. What does he mean? He stepped out of the thinking mind. That's what he meant. Not that he was ignorant, because Socrates by any means was a very intelligent sentinel being, and I think he's taught us how, as human beings in one way or another, how to think, through anthropology and philosophy and mythology. I've learned some really profound lessons in life that are serving. And I'm recalling, like when I did, there's so many videos watching Jane Goodall with the apes. And I was listening up to about Darwin and Socrates and all of these great people that were so wise beyond their time. And I'll say, just use me, at that time in college, I was so ignorant to what was even being taught to me. But I soaked it in somehow, and my mind stored it through the mirror neurons that we have, because we take a picture of every slice everything we do in life, almost like a Polaroid shot. And we store that information in our cells. That's why they call them mirror neurons, right? And those neurons fire when they fire. When two polarities meet, opposite positive polarity meet, bam, and something becomes a spark and becomes alive, then, there's a thought, there's an idea, there's a form, there's something, right? I am just sitting in awe at this, because of all of the things that the stillness of stepping out of my thinking mind and being just in stillness and awareness. Now I understand why it's thoughtless. why there's no thought. I couldn't understand it. I'm like, why don't I have a thought in my brain? What's going on? And it's because I'm sitting in consciousness all the time, and it is without thought. And if I am in consciousness without thought, thought gives rise to knowledge. I have no knowledge without thought. Only what the ego wants to assign it. And that can be very detrimental and cause some surya to my life, because the ego knows everything, right? It feels diminished when you have an awakening. It's dying. It feels threatened. And so it'll come crawling through the back door and try to renew itself in any way, shape, or form it can. And so I was thinking maybe it's the egoic mind saying to me, well, what are you now, meaningless? Do you mean nothing? Do you do nothing? Do you know nothing? Are you diminished in your life? Because those were thoughts that I had. And I'm like, no, it doesn't mean any of those things. It means I'm sitting in consciousness without thought. Without thought, I have no knowledge. So if I go into an environment and it creates a thought and I assign a meaning to it and an action's required, I take the action, right? But as long as I'm sitting in consciousness, there's no thought, there's no knowledge, there's no action to be taken. I'm just sitting in bliss, in unconditional love, peace, and joy. And I'm rocking in the arms of my Creator, and I feel unconditional love, peace, and joy emanating from the inside of my body, coming out, and it's just rocking me. It's just rocking me. So I was just wanting to share that little message that, sometimes when spiritual teachers talk about ignorance, they're not talking about not knowing something. They're talking about you or I stepping out of our thinking mind into stillness, into awareness where it is thoughtless. It's New Year's Eve, 2021. Wow. 2021 was a horrible year for a lot of people. Grave challenges, for sure. I was questioning ignorance. Not in a conceptual, like, I don't know that's a color blue, or I don't know that you said no or yes. I mean, to step out of my